Okay, pre-calculus. Time for analytic geometry. We need to review distance and midpoint, and also completing the square. So distance formula is very easy. People have trouble remembering it, but it's really just the Pythagorean theorem. If you have points at -2, 1, and 3, 4, then you can think of there being a right triangle. This side is the y values between 4 and 1, so this side has length 3, and the x values go from -2 to 3, so this has length 5. To find the hypotenuse, you do a squared plus b squared equals c squared, so 9 plus 25 will give you c squared, and to find the distance, you take the square root. So the distance between these 2 points is the square root of 34. The formula is square root of, what did they say? x2 minus x1 squared, so 9 minus 1 squared, but that's just how you figure out how long this side is, plus 7 minus 1 squared, which is how you figure out how long this side is. Add them together, a squared plus b squared, and take the square root. So this one will turn into square root of 64 plus 36, which is the square root of 100, which is 10. To find the midpoint, there is a formula, but all this is doing is finding the average value. So the point right in between -2, 1 and 3, 4 has an x value that's right in between the x values and a y value right in between the y values. So -2 plus 3 over 2 is 1/2. That's the x value. And 1 plus 4 over 2 is 5/2. That's the y value. For this one, 1 plus 9 over 2, which would be 5, and 7 plus 1 over 2, which would be 4. So the point halfway in between 1, 1 and 9, 7 is 5, 4. So distance, midpoint. To complete the square, remember, first you need to divide by a, if there is an a other than 1. For this equation, a is 1, b is 1, c is -6. So we don't need to divide by anything because a is 1. We do need to move c to the other side, so x squared plus x equals 6. So you get your constant out of the way. Our goal is to solve this by taking the square root. But this isn't a perfect square, and we can't write it as a perfect square and then take the square root until it is. To make it a perfect square, we have to add something. Basically, what you would get if you took this and FOILed it out would be x squared plus 1/2 x plus 1/2 x plus 1/4. So what you do in all these cases, you take your middle term, your b term, cut it in half, half of 1 is 1/2, square that, and add it to both sides. So I'm adding 1/4 to both sides. X plus 1/2 squared equals 6 plus 1/4 is 25/4. Go ahead and put it in your calculator if you don't believe me. Now that this is a perfect square, x squared plus x plus 1/4, we can write it as x plus 1/2 squared, and then solve by taking the square root of both sides. This becomes x plus 1/2 equals plus or minus, square root of 25 is 5, square root of 4 is 2. Then you want to get x by itself, so you subtract 1/2 from both sides. We write that as -1/2 plus or minus 5/2. -1 plus 5 is 4, divided by 2 is 2. -1 minus 5 would be -6, divided by 2 is -3. And you can check those by plugging them in, they both work. This one, a is 4, so we have to divide everything by 4 first, because we need to get that beginning term alone. So x squared minus x minus 15 over 4 equals 0 over 4 is still 0. Sorry, I'm getting my bearings in the way. Once again, we want to write it as a perfect square. Oh, first we've got to get the constant out of there. So equals 15 over 4. Once again, we have to get a perfect square, so we cut the b is -1 here, cut it in half, add the square to both sides. 1/2 squared is 1/4, so I add 1/4 to both sides. Now the left side is x minus 1/2 squared, and the right hand side is 15 over 4 plus 1 over 4 is 16/4 or 4. Square root of both sides gives you x minus 1/2 equals plus or minus 2. Don't forget your plus or minus. X equals 1/2 plus or minus 2. X equals -1.5, positive 2.5. Decimals or fractions, I don't really care. And check them by plugging back in, they both work. On the back here, we have these first problems are just practice in figuring out what the last term will be. So the rule here when you're completing the square is add, this is the step that always confuses people, add half of b squared to both sides. So all these first problems are asking is what is half of b squared? What would that last term be to make it a perfect square? Half of 6 is 3, 3 squared is 9. So this becomes x squared plus 6x plus 9, which is x plus 3 squared, and you can check it by FOILing out. Half of -10 is -5. -5 squared is 25. So this becomes z minus 5 squared. Half of 34 is 17, so this last term becomes 289. Half of 32 is 16, so this is 256. You'll notice these are all positive because you're always squaring the last term. When you square a negative, it becomes positive. When you square a positive, it's positive. So the last term is always going to be positive. I would like you to try these. Pause the video and try them on your own, and then I'll come back and put the answers up for all the rest of these. So here I am with the answers. To number 1, you should have -7 plus or minus the square root of 87. To number 2, -3 plus or minus the square root of 68, which simplifies to 2 times the square root of 17. Number 3, a equals -7 plus or minus 10, since those evaluate to integers, -17 or positive 3. For number 4, you get x equals 6 plus or minus 5, that is either 1 or 11. And I've tried to show all my work here, so if you had any trouble, including saying what I was doing here, adding half of b squared to both sides. That's the 36 here, the 49, and the 9. So if you didn't get that, you could pause this and, fingernails are filthy, sorry about that. You could pause this and check over my work, make sure you understand what happened. By the way, there are a lot of good videos on YouTube about completing the square. Just search for completing the square and watch some. People explain it slightly different ways. Maybe you find one that makes a little more sense to you or clicks a little better with you, and that's all I want, is for you to learn it. So do spend some time looking around and finding one that makes it the clearest to you. 9, 10, 11, and 12, you're just looking for the midpoint. So you add your x's and divide by 2, add your y's and divide by 2. So 1/2, 3/2, or 0.5, 1.5. -7 halves, -1/2, or -3.5, -0.5. 3/2, 1/2, or 1.5, 0.5. And -3, 3. 7, 8, 9, and 10 are using the distance formula. So you should get, for number 7, 5 times the square root of 5, or 11.2. I don't care which. At this point, I want you to know how to do this properly. I'm not really concerned about what form you put your final answer in. Sometimes one is more useful than the other. Number 8, square root of 178, or 13.3. Number 9 is 20. And number 10 is square root of 85, or 9.2. Okay.